Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the Cozy Moth Knits Podcast. My name is Caitlin, and this is a podcast dedicated to my knitting endeavors and my process through developing my own knitting style and just learning things as I go along. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as the Cozy Moth Knits, and that's where I will be posting all of my projects and my whips and my FOs as I'm working through them. So go give me a follow if you like to see even more of me after this video. So the reason why I started this podcast was because I had a lot of time on my hands because it's 2020, as we know, and I started finding myself watching more and more knitting podcasts. I mean, I had before 2020, but I just wanted to watch, or I just kept watching more, and I thought, well, this seems like a lot of fun. Like, this is something that I could totally do, and so I decided to do it. So this is why we're here, and we will see how it goes. Hopefully it picks up a little bit and people like to hear about, this little girl, this girl from Delaware who just wants to, talk about her knitting. So a little bit of history about me. I've been knitting since I was about 12 years old. I was homeschooled, so we often went on field trips or trips to the mall, and there was a Michael's, and we were allowed to pick one item from Michael's, like one craft thing that we could focus on, and the I think it was like a Klutz, I think it was Cuts or Klutz brand Learn How to Knit kit, and it had a skein of purple yarn, like maybe about 50 grams, and there was like little projects that you could learn as you went along. My specialty was knitting a phone case for like those little tiny phones we used to have in the early 2000s. So I made plenty of those and gave them out to friends and family, and that's where my love of knitting started. And I would go back to Michael's and pick up, bargain bin yarn, and I would knit scarves and hats, and they weren't the most beautiful. There was definitely some issues. My decreases were always off because I only knew one decrease, and that was to knit two together. And my gauge was always off, but I was still proud of them, and I still gave them away proudly as presents. Through middle school and high school, I would pick up the needles every now and then, and would go through a phase where I was like, okay, I'm gonna start knitting more. But then I would kind of fall off because I would tell myself, I'm not good enough to, I'm not skilled enough to make socks or sweaters or anything past a hat or a phone case. So I would always talk myself out of learning more. So I was never super avid knitter, but I would always say one of my hobbies is knitting. But it was never more than a scarf, maybe during the winter or in the middle of summer when I caught the knitting bug. But recently, back in the spring of 2019, I was recommended a video posted by the YouTube channel Arne and Carlos. For those of you who don't know, Arne and Carlos are two men from Norway who are fiber artists, and they make absolutely beautiful, stunning works of art with yarn, and how they, create patterns and color work and meshing different types of yarn. And I was just drawn in, and I started catching the knitting bug again. I'm like, oh, I've never worked in color work. It's always been straight color, just one color, nothing fancy. I'm like, oh, well, maybe I could do color work. Color work doesn't seem too bad. So I made a color work hat, which I don't have now. I can't show you my first attempt at color work because I ended up giving it away to a little cousin of mine for I think his second or third birthday. So I gave that to him, and then they had other tutorials like how to knit socks, and I was like, well, I enjoy these guys' content, so maybe I'll watch this video. Maybe they'll explain it in a way that makes sense to me. So they were advertising their Schockenmeyer Perfect socks because they work with Schockenmeyer, and they have their own colorways for socks. So I figured like, okay, this is something I think I can do. So I grabbed my sister because it just happened to be a Saturday that I was hanging out with her. And we went to our local yarn store, and they had one of those Wool in the Gang Perfect Colorworks Colorwork skeins, where you knit to this color and then you start to decrease, or you start to, or like you only do the ribbing in this color and then you do from this color to that color and then you make the heel, and then so I'm like, well, this will be simple enough, so I'll do that. So that's what I did, and these are my first pair of socks. They're a little they're a little wonky, but this is how they turned out. Like the biggest toe in the world. And I was really proud of them, and I was like, yeah, like the coloring is like a little weird because like, everyone's gauge is different, and like that's kind of the beauty of these socks, is that they don't have to be perfect. Like from far away, it like looks like some sort of animal print, but obviously close up it's a little bit more weird. And it's a German short row heel, and I feel like I did fairly well on my first short row heel. And yeah, I don't wear them because the toe wasn't done super well, and the cuff wasn't done super well either. As you can see, there's like this little guy that like I couldn't weave in well enough. So these are just like memorabilia, like, oh, my first pair of socks. So proud of myself, keep them forever, so I was like, okay, so I knit some socks, and I just never stopped knitting after that. I was like, okay, now the sky's the limit. And I just kept going, and I bought more sock yarn, and I bought more perfect colorways, and just like kept going. And I started getting more involved on knitting Instagram by following a lot of artists and indie dyers and other fiber artists, and they're just inspiring to me to continue to knit. And yeah, and just in the past like year and a half, like I've learned so much just by Instagram and YouTube, and just like really like dedicating myself to the craft again, and telling myself that I am capable. I am capable of knitting socks and sweaters and shorts and bralettes and and shawls. Anything that I can put my mind to, I have the ability to do. So that's where I am, and like that's why I decided to do this podcast again, so I can talk my way through the things that I'm learning, and maybe get feedback, or maybe I can help you as well. Maybe you're also struggling with like, oh, like, yeah, I can make a shawl, but I can never knit a sweater. Like, but you're not alone. Like you're definitely not alone in this, and we can work through this together, and it'll be a lot of fun along the way. So that's my knitting history. A little bit more about me as a person. I live in Delaware, and you're like, where is Delaware? Now that Wayne's World joke, like, oh, I'm in Delaware. And that's all that there is to say about Delaware. And it's true, because there's really nothing to do here in Delaware. And, but I'm here with my husband and my 2 dogs, and I apologize if you hear them. My little dog is very protective of the house, and if anyone is outside, then she'll bark. So, but live here with my husband and my 2 dogs. As boring as it is here, I can never leave. Like, Delaware is in my blood, and I don't think I could ever leave here. Like, there's just something comforting about it, despite going out elsewhere and visiting other places. Delaware is where I'm comfortable, and that's where I will stay. I try to like add more spice to my life despite living in the most boring state in the Union. In addition to me living in Delaware, I know, so exciting, I am also a master's student, a graduate student. I am studying to get my master's in library science. And that basically means that once I get my master's in library science, I can become a librarian. Am I currently working in a library right now? No. And that's very frustrating. I have worked in libraries in the past. I worked one when I was in high school, and I worked in one during my undergrad for 1 year. And it's very hard to get a library job in Delaware. I've been applying for over a year at this point. I've been trying, and I finally got a library job literally 3 days before Delaware shut down because of COVID. Yay! So that was frustrating. But I am 2 semesters away from graduating with my master's, finishing my program. So the goal is to get into a library before May 2021. That is the goal. So I'm doing my best despite it all. So even though I am in school to become a librarian, basically, it doesn't mean that I'm a bookworm. Like, when I tell people that that's what I'm going to school for, they're like, oh, you must love to read. You must love to read. You must be reading all the time. You must have your nose in a book all the time. Not really. I'm at that point in my life where if I'm sitting there reading a book, I start to fall asleep. And that isn't very productive when it comes to, reading through a book that I'm sure is a wonderful piece of literature, but if I'm falling asleep, like, I can't really take it in. So I've been leaning more towards audiobooks, which I highly recommend. I just finished listening to the Michelle McNamara book that was published posthumously, about the Golden State Killer, and that was very interesting. I highly recommend if you like true crime. I'm not like a huge true crime fanatic, but I'm kind of like a closet true crime lover. Highly recommend. The audiobook is great. You just put in your car, listen to it on your commute, and you'll be done in a couple days. So I recommend that. And right now I'm currently listening to Neil Gaiman's American Gods, which I had read a few years ago, but I don't remember anything from it. Like, I was on vacation, I read it from cover to cover, and I was like, this is a great book. And then people were like, oh, what's it about? Like, I don't remember. It just like didn't sink in for some reason, but I know that it was good. I love Neil Gaiman's writing, and yeah, maybe you can download it too. We can listen along together, and maybe we'll have a little discussion about it. This knitting podcast can turn into a book group. That'd be fun, right? So my other hobbies include, these are all hobbies that I can do while knitting, so that's kind of a plus. I watch a lot of YouTube, a lot of Netflix, a lot of Hulu when I'm not working or doing school, obviously. So yeah, that's what I'm doing instead of reading, I guess. But I do love listening to podcasts too, and so basically any media besides sitting down and reading a book, I like to consume. So I'll list off like some of my favorite YouTubers, TV shows, and podcasts. My favorite knitting podcast, because we gotta get, it's the regular YouTube, now it's knitting YouTube. Obviously Arna and Carlos, they post every Sunday, and it's like a tutorial or like a, what we've been working on, sort of video. They're just the cutest. they're just a fun group of guys, and I learn a lot from them watching them as well. So it's fun and educational. There's also Bumblebee Acres. Bumblebee Acres is one of my favorite indie dyers. They're like one of the first indie dyers I started buying from, and they have these cute little podcasts as well, and just catching everyone up on what they're doing. So highly recommend them, and checking them out, checking out their stock, because their yarns are just so beautiful. I also like Stress Knits, Stacy at Stress Knits Podcast. Again, her yarns are absolutely beautiful as well, and yeah, I kind of have a hard time explaining why I like knitting podcasts. Basically the overall consensus is that I like their personality and I want to hang out with them. And I guess that's what a podcast is for, is that you're kind of hanging out with someone, right? As like kind of like a mukbang, but for knitting. Because knitting can sometimes be like a solitary hobby, so it's nice to like have someone along with you. Like if you don't have like a friend close by, or like especially now, like there's no knitting group that you can go to, it's nice to have someone to make you feel like you're not alone in your hobby. There's also the Crimson Stitchery. I just discovered her on vacation, actually. She came up in my recommendeds. I think it was her latest big one, which was like knitting on a budget or something along those lines. And I was taking a train from one destination to another on vacation, and I just sat there, knitted, and just like binge watched a whole bunch of her podcasts. And I enjoy her very much. There's also the Wool and Forest Knits podcast, which is also lovely, and the Not Your Average Knitting podcast, which is a fairly new podcast. I think they started it I think a little over a month ago, and I've just enjoyed those two as well. Like they're pretty awesome. So yeah, those are my favorite YouTube channels. I guess I'll rattle off quickly like some of the shows that I enjoy, so you kind of get a little bit more about my personality. Some of the shows that I've watched recently are Seinfeld, which is 10 out of 10. Cheers, 10 out of 10. Frasier, 10 out of 10. MASH, 11 out of 10, if that's possible. The Good Place, I'd give it 9 out of 10. And I'm almost finished Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is 10 out of 10. Highly recommend. And I've almost finished rewatching Portlandia. My husband and I recently went to the Pacific Northwest, spent some time in Portland, and I'd already watched all of Portlandia before going to Portland. I'm like, well, let me watch Portlandia again and see like how close it is to the actual city and the actual vibe that the city gives off. And I feel like Fred Armisen and Carrie Bronstein, they just hit the nail right on the head, and it's awesome. So that's my comedy style, if you want to know. And some of my favorite podcasts, Scott Aukerman's Comedy Bang Bang, Freedom, which is Scott Aukerman, Paul F. Tompkins, Lauren Lapkus, the Never Not Funny Jimmy Pardo podcast, and the last podcast on the left, which is a true crime, horror, supernatural, sometimes aliens involved, like just a fun group of guys, and I enjoy their podcast as well. So just a couple more things to wrap up this section about me, and then we can actually turn this into a knitting podcast. My personality type is ISFJ. I always have to like double check because I want to say ISNJ because that just sounds better rolling off the tongue, but it's actually ISFJ. I'm an Enneagram 1 wing 2, but sometimes a 2 wing 1 depending on the day, I guess. It's pretty interchangeable. In addition to knitting, I also collect records, like vinyl records, and I've been doing that for several years now. I've developed a pretty substantial collection. So as if I wasn't giving off the old soul vibe already, now you know a little bit more that I do collect records as well. And because this is very important, I am primarily a tea drinker. I'll pull it up now. But I am starting to enjoy coffee a little bit more too, especially after going to the Pacific Northwest and discovering the French press. The French press has absolutely changed the way I drink coffee. All right, so now we will move into like a standard knitting podcast. So enough about me. So I guess we'll get started with some recent finished objects. I have a little crate of them. So I guess we'll start with these pair of socks that I knit while on vacation. These are they're called the Gravel Path socks. So they have a nice little slip stitch detail there and seed stitch all down from the cuff down to the toe. And this is knitted in Bumblebee Acres have it written down over here. In the Rosebud Motel. I knew it was a Schitt's Creek colorway. So look at that. Just love that colorway. When you think of the Rosebud Motel, this is definitely the colors. I really enjoy this. It was very time consuming. It was a lot more time consuming than I imagined. It took me it was a lot of time to finish them. I knitted them mostly on planes and trains, and so a little bit of downtime in Portland. But that's when I knitted them primarily. And I highly recommend. I can link by the way, all links to yarn shops and patterns will be listed down below, so you can check them out there. I believe this was a free pattern on Ravelry. Don't quote me on it, but yeah, it was fun. It was pretty mindless. So yeah, these were a lot of fun, and I love how they turned out. So there's that. And then I have a bralette by with the pattern was by Jessie Made Designs, and I love Jessie's patterns. I love how she writes them. They're very easy to understand, and they make me feel better about the whole process. So this is a 3x3 rib, so it looks very small, but it stretches, like it really stretches. This is her ribbed crop top, or ribbed bralette, I should say, in fingering weight. So it was fun. It was a fun little project. I learned a lot. I feel like it was a good precursor to knitting more like tops, because I've never knit a sweater. So I feel like this was a good precursor to that. This was knit in Undercover Otter's Your Certifiable Quint, which was part of her what was it called? It's like her monthly subscription kit. Anyway, but it was based off of Jaws, and I ordered this again right before COVID, and it took a long time to get here, and I picked this color. You can't see what color it is, by the way. It's just like a guess. So you get, the theme, and then it arrives, and then you're like, oh, it's a surprise what it's gonna look like. I picked this one. I only did this because my husband loves sharks and Jaws, and I thought, oh, like this will be fun to make, something to make me think of him. And yeah, it's a fun little top. Not something I would wear every day, but I basically knitted it for the education of it, basically. So that was a lot of fun. Then another one of Jessie May's designs is her butt shorts, which have taken over Instagram. And I knit myself a pair of butt shorts back in April, I think. I knitted them for myself, and they were super fun, super easy. I thought, I got in my head again, saying like, oh, like it's gonna be tough to make shorts. Like, I don't know, like I hope it turns out okay, and they turned out great. So my sister saw them and said like, oh, can you knit me a pair? I said, sure. So, but these have been a pain in the butt. I messed up on them 3 times. Like I accidentally inverted the ribbing, and like that totally screwed it up. I thought like, oh, it should be fine. Like, let me see, like maybe it'll turn out cool. And no, it did not look good at all. So I had to rip it back, and then the number of stitches was wrong, and I had to rip it back. It was such a mess. But I finally finished them. It's been taking me like a couple months to knit them. So here they are. It's kind of hard to, again, like they stretch out. So like laying flat, they look really strange, and like the bottom, the legs, they kind of look like scalloped. Or like, what are those shirts from the 90s? Oh, the lettuce ribbing, or the lettuce hem. That's what they kind of look like. But when you put them on, they're absolutely adorable, and they're high-waisted, and they were just so much fun to make. And this was knit out of a Knit Picks Swished Eek, I think it is. Very easy to work with yarn, very cost effective too. Not all yarn has to be like super expensive, though I do know why indie yarn is expensive, and I respect it absolutely. But with something like this that's going to be worn on the bottom half of your body, I just wanted to find something that like wasn't going to cost me like $100 to knit. But yeah, so I'll be giving these to my sister as a present soon. And then another recent FO I finished right after vacation was a shawl, and this is made, it's an Andrea Mallory shawl. It's one of the fades. I don't think it's Find Your Fade, but it's one of the fades. So this is made in Ritual Dyes, their sock weight yarn or their fingering weight yarn, and this green and purple, this is in their colorway Virgo, and the blue is in their colorway Cancer. And I am a Cancer, so I wanted to find something to make with their Cancer yarn. So I found Andrea Mallory's pattern, and I thought, oh, like that would be lovely. And so I picked the green to go along with it, and I think it turned out okay. So I am absolutely awful at yarn overs. I can never do them correctly. So if any of you have like knitted this pattern before, you can see that like this is completely wrong. But I kind of liked, but I don't know, I gotten so far already before I realized that it was absolutely wrong. And I was like, you know what? It's fine. I kind of like how it turned out, how it looks, the texture of it. So it's a nice like springtime, like end of summer shawl. So like this is how they're supposed to look. More uniform and beautiful, not like this, where it kind of looks like a net. But yeah, I like how it turned out. I'm satisfied. So I guess moving on from FOs, we'll move into whips. And we'll start with these socks that have been the death of me for months. So they're in my Vera Bradley. It's a makeup bag that I was given for Christmas, but I thought, you know what? This is a perfect little like sock project bag. So that's what I use it for. So these are the Mountain Mama socks. And pattern will be linked down below. I can't remember the name of the artist who created the pattern. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. But here they are. And this is in Stress Knits, one of her Mountain Mama colorway kits. And this is the one that she advertised on her Instagram often, or one of the first ones that she made, and I thought, I gotta have it. It's absolutely stunning. I love the color combination, and like I just gotta do it. Gotta get it. So as soon as she posted it, I bought a kit. So I've been having the hardest time with these socks, which I didn't think I would have a hard time with, because I handle colorways or colorwork, pardon me. I handle colorwork fairly well, and my gauge is always well. My gauge is pretty perfect, if I do say so myself, with colorwork. And with the colorwork over the mountains, the little mountain range, it was just so tight. Like I could not get my heel over it. Like my regular sock, when I make a sock, it's normally 64 stitches, and like that's just the whole way down, from cuff to toe, or cuff to foot, and then decreasing for the toe. And like I've never had a problem. They fit my foot really well. And I've never had a problem with color working and that size for my foot. But I have frogged this sock at least 5 times. So finally I decided to just go up a size on the sock, just so that it would fit over my heel. It's still a little tight, still a little bit of a struggle, but at least it goes over my heel. And it doesn't look too great. Like maybe, like it'll look good like over a pair of jeans maybe. Like you pull it up over the cuff of the jeans. It's just like, it's too wide for my leg and it like bunches. So I ended up decreasing for the foot so that at least it fit my foot and it wasn't like super like baggy on my foot, but it's just the cuff and the leg that's big. So I finished one and then I started working on the second, but because I have frogged this so much, this aqua green, I ran out of it. And I frogged it so much and it was like basically disintegrating the more I knitted it, and it was just looking really rough. So the last time I frogged, I just ended up scrapping it. And as upsetting as it was, scrapping such beautiful yarn, it couldn't be, it was unknittable. So I was like praying and praying as I like kept going knitting, and then I got to a point where I had like maybe this much left of the aqua, and I still had so much color work to go. So I ran upstairs and I got it's falling. I got my Schachmeyer Regia Premium Silk, because it was about the same size as the yarn weight for Stress Knits yarn, and I added white to it. So it's not, you can tell, but at least it's not like a completely different color. And it was such a shame because it was literally only that much left before I switched to the pink, and then it's just pink all the way down. So disappointed in that, but I'm gonna finish them because I bought this kit with the intention of making these socks, and gosh darn it, I'm gonna finish them. They're probably gonna be like socks that I wear inside of boots just to keep my feet warm, or socks that I wear around the house. Definitely not like going out and showing the world my Mountain Mama socks, but yeah, like I kind of like a little disappointed in them, but they're still beautiful. They need to be blocked, and one of the downsides is that you can see the floats through, like you can kind of tell where I caught the floats in the aqua and a little bit in the white, which is like kind of upsetting. And I tried so many different methods to this. Like I tried not catching floats, I tried catching more floats. I just couldn't figure it out. And I know I'm not the only one who struggled with this, but whatever, they're still gonna be a beautiful pair of socks, even if they're just like wear at home type of socks. Another whip is the Me Oh My Tee by Park Williams. And I have had so much of this Schachmeyer Catania cotton, and I bought this yarn with the intention of, I have one right here, the intention of making a whole lot of these like these reusable like grocery bags, like because I kind of like use it as like a beach bag, because that's basically the only thing you can do in Delaware, go to the mall and go to the beach. So I have so many different colors of this. I was gonna make a bunch of these for people, but the pattern just gets really boring and it takes forever, and I'm like, there's so many other things I could be doing with my time. So this Catania yarn has been sitting on my shelf for a while. Then I saw that this pattern was knit up in cotton, and I thought, well, this would be a good way to, you know, cut down on some of my stash. So I'm knitting it in this color, this royal blue, cobalt blue, I don't know. It's very, very bright, but I thought it would be something fun, and if anything, it would be educational. So I've only got about like maybe 2 inches so far, 2.5 inches. I have to knit 7 inches before I start like the actual shaping of the garment into an actual shirt. But I'm excited to see how it turns out. This is my first like top that I'm knitting. Like, I guess maybe a shawl or a scarf counts as a top, but not really. So this is my first top. So this is like my little introduction, and it's with a yarn that I'm familiar with. So I'm happy with that, and I'm excited to see how it turns out. It's like a little cropped, which I'm totally fine with. So yeah, hopefully next episode it'll be finished or almost finished, and you'll get to see what it looks like. And this is my twisted yarn and fiber sock bag. It's absolutely adorable. I love it so much. I love bees. There's little bees on it. I'm very much an advocate for saving the bees. And I think you should be too. Bees are very important. But yeah, it's a perfect bag. It's their sock bag, but I've put so much in this bag. I've put shawls, I've put hats, I've put socks, a t-shirt. I've like put so much in here, and they're so roomy. So I highly recommend them, and I'll have them linked down below as well. Supporting small business. I grew up in a family that owned a small business, so I have a soft spot for small businesses and supporting them, because I know how hard it can be. And I recommend you do that too. Like, yeah, it's super easy just to go for the larger corporations because normally they're cheaper, they ship faster or whatever. But there's some really great artists out there and makers and people who are really good at their craft, and it's important to support them. So my next whip isn't really a whip yet, but I have all the intentions of casting it on today. But we shall see. Again, another twisted yarn and fiber bag. I just got this the other day, and it has moths on it because this is a Cozy Moth podcast. It has moths and other bugs and beetles and stuff on it, and I thought I gotta get it. It fits the brand, right? So what's in here is going to be the Jacqueline C. Slack Soul Tank, and it's going to be knitted up in Ritual Dyes Undine yarn. I've heard Undine and Undine, but when I was in Portland, I actually ended up stopping by their shop, and I feel so bad. Like, my social anxiety is like what got the better of me that day, because I went to the shop thinking that like I know it was COVID and everything, but thinking that I could go there and buy 3 skeins of this yarn. Like, I didn't expect to go in, but I wanted to like buy from her directly because I was there. Because when was I ever going to be in Portland again? And I wanted to support her because I've knitted up, this shawl, and I enjoyed their yarn. So I wanted to buy 3 skeins of this Undine yarn in lamb's ear. And here it is in the skein. That's it caked up. And I got there and I felt so bad. I feel like I was like bothering her. Like, I'm sure I was, like, she didn't give off that vibe, but like that, like rude or anything. But I feel like I was like wasting her time. Cause she had like 1 skein in lamb's ear, or like 1 skein of each. And I asked if she had 3, and she was like, no, it's dyed to order. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. So I ended up walking away. But as we were taking a lift back to our Airbnb, I ordered it. So technically I bought it in Portland, but not in person. But yeah, so this is a cotton and linen blend, and it's such an interesting feel. Like, it's very different from the cotton that I'm knitting in the Mio Mai tee. It feels more, what's the word? More raw or holistic, maybe. But yeah, I'm excited to get this started, and hopefully next episode I'll have maybe a little bit done. If any of you have seen the Soul Tank floating around on Instagram. It just looks so beautiful, and I'm looking forward to that lace work despite me not being very good at yarn over, so hopefully it turns out okay. So those are my whips, and I thought I would talk to you about some yarn that I recently purchased. This is yarn that I actually purchased, some of it purchased in the Pacific Northwest when I went on vacation there. So I guess first was the Ritual Dyes Undine yarn. So I didn't buy it out of the store, but I bought it online. But I saw it and I got to hold it, which I thought was great. I got to hold it before I bought it, which is so important to me. So at least I was able to do that despite me, you know, bothering her. So there's that. And then when we were in Seattle, there was a cute little yarn store. It was very hard to find open yarn stores or fiber art stores in the Pacific Northwest, especially now, because most of them were closed or were by appointment only. But there was one store in Pike Place Market, and I can't remember what it was called for the love of me, and I feel so awful, but it's like the one yarn store in Pike Place. If you look it up, it'll come up. Maybe I'll find it and I'll put it right here. And they had a skein of hedgehog fibers, and my husband saw this and he thought, oh, that's so beautiful, like you should get it. And I thought, okay, I'll get it for you and I'll knit you a pair of socks. I already caked it up because I love caking yarn. I love caking skeins. I don't know what it is, but I just love it. So this is called Salty Tales. It's gray, and it has some purples and blues and some yellows and reds, and it's a beautiful combination. I love how it looks. It'll look great in a pair of socks. I'm just kind of trying to make some like nice like dress socks for my husband. So then there's that one, and then I bought another one, which was hand dyed by a local dyer, which that's what I was looking for specifically. So I bought the hedgehog fibers for my husband because he liked it. But then I got this one by Sophistisock. It's backwards. I'm sorry, because I'm filming on my iPhone. This color is called Phoenix. It's a beautiful red tonal, and it has some little sparkles in it, like just the slightest sparkle to it. And I was happy to support this local dyer, and hopefully I'll find a pattern to create with that. And lastly, so last week I was at a party and I had a little bit too much to drink. Well, not too much. I was like 2 beers in. And I was, you know, it was a lull in the party. I was scrolling through Instagram, and Ritual Dyes had posted up their latest colorway, and I looked at it, and I sent a screenshot to my husband, and I said, this is an absolutely beautiful color, and I want to make a sweater out of it. And he jokingly said, do it. So I did it. And so I bought, I think it was altogether 8 skeins of yarn to make this sweater. So here it is, the beautiful Ritual Dyes in their chestnut colorway. So beautiful, so fall. I love this rust color, just absolutely gorgeous. So I got it in their Maven base, which is 100% Ramulette wool. It's 2-ply wool, just so beautiful, and it has that hand spun quality to it. It's not like I don't know, I just get hand spun vibes from it. And then also their Faye, which is their lace weight yarn, which is kid mohair and silk. And so I'm going to hold it double, and I'm going to knit the Jessie May Cozy Classic Raglan in this. Not sure when. Probably when I finish either, probably when I finish the two primary whips that I have, then I'll get this on the needles. But I definitely want to have it before Thanksgiving. I think that's my goal because I want to wear this on Thanksgiving Day. And I wanted to share with you because I thought this was super cute. So Ritual Dyes, when I first ordered from them, they gave me a little extra, and it was frankincense. You're supposed to burn it, or you're supposed to put it in like an amulet or something. But like I don't burn frankincense or incense or whatever in my home, so like I just have it just in case for a special occasion. So there's that. And then I bought the chestnut colorway, and then she sent me this crystal, which I thought was so cool and so unique. And it is she has a little card. So it says selenite wand. Selenite will naturally rise vibrations in the space surrounding it. It is a protective stone, shielding a person or space from outside influences and allowing the user to make a deeper connection to their inner self or third eye. Physically, selenite removes energy blockages from our physical and etheric bodies. I'm sure I said that wrong, I'm sorry. It encourages mental clarity, clearing of confusion, and revealing the bigger picture. So I thought this was so cool because like I love crystals, but like I've never got any for myself. I'm like, well, this will start my crystal collection. I just think they're just the coolest things. So I just wanted to share that and how that was like super cool and super thoughtful and just like fun. And it goes along with their witchy theme, which I appreciate. So yeah, I think that is it. I hope you like what you see, and I hope that you subscribe and stick around for a little bit. As I continue to go through the process of knitting and documenting my knitting. I would like to do this every couple of weeks. So yeah, again, all the information all the yarns and the patterns that I mentioned will be listed below. You can find me on Ravelry and Instagram at the Cozy Moth Knits. If you feel free to give me a follow there on both those platforms and here, and feel free to hit up in the comments anything you want to add, anything you want to see, any questions you have. I would love to interact with you guys. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me on this journey, and stay safe, and I will see you later.